Captain Lisa Monroe stood on the bridge of the massive ship Terra's Vengeance and watched the stars through the big window in front of her. Behind her ship floated hundreds of other human ships, all dark metal and glowing engines, ready for what was coming next. She had waited 50 long years for this moment. The time had finally come for humanity to return to the galaxy that had thrown them out like unwanted trash. Lisa remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell her when she was just a little girl. Stories about how humans once lived among the stars with other species, how they built amazing cities on distant worlds and shared their knowledge freely. But the other races got scared when humans started making new technology too fast. The tall, beautiful elves with their magic and the strange alien creatures with their old wisdom decided humans were too dangerous to keep around. The Galactic Confederacy had been formed by these aliens and elves working together for the first time in thousands of years. They said humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too quick to change things that had worked fine for ages. So they gave humanity a choice that was not really a choice at all. Leave the inner galaxy forever or be destroyed completely. Lisa's people had chosen to live. They packed up everything they could carry and flew their ships to the empty dark. Space is at the edge of the galaxy, where nothing good could grow and no one else wanted to go. For 50 years they survived in those cold, distant places, building new ships and making new weapons while they dreamed of coming home. Dr. Amy Carter walked over to Lisa's side carrying a small data pad in her hands. Amy was the smartest person Lisa had ever met, someone who could understand both human science and alien biology better than anyone else. Her short brown hair was messy from working all night, and her green eyes looked tired, but excited. Amy said, "The computers had just finished translating some strange signals they picked up from the inner galaxy. The signals were not from the aliens who ruled the Confederacy. They were from the elves, and they were asking for help." Lisa took the datapad and read the message that made her heart beat faster. The message was from someone called Lyra Lai Moonwhisper, who said she was a princess of the elven people. She wrote that the Confederacy had turned against the elves just like they had turned against humans so long ago. The aliens were now taking elven children away from their families and cutting down the ancient magical forests that elves needed to live. The beautiful elven cities were being destroyed and replaced with ugly alien factories that made weapons and ships. Lyra begged any humans who might be listening to remember that not all elves had wanted to exile humanity. She promised to share ancient elven star charts and magical secrets if humans would help save her people from the same fate that humans had suffered. She said the elves had learned too late that the aliens could not be trusted, and that working with them had been the biggest mistake in elven history. Commander Kate Sullivan came running onto the bridge with more news. Kate was Lisa's best friend and the person she trusted most in the whole fleet. Kate had short red hair and was always ready to fight, but she was also smart about planning battles. Kate said their spy ships near the inner galaxy had seen something terrible. The alien Confederacy was not just hurting the elves. They were attacking other species too, taking over their worlds and making them into slaves. The aliens had built huge prison ships where they kept anyone who tried to fight back. The galaxy that humans remembered as a place of many different peoples working together had become a dark empire ruled by fear. Lisa looked at the message from Lyra again and thought about what it meant. For 50 years, humans had dreamed of getting revenge on everyone who had exiled them. They had built the biggest and strongest fleet in galactic history just so they could come back and make their enemies pay for what they had done. But now it seemed like some of their enemies had become victims too. Amy said she believed the elven princess was telling the truth. The signals they were picking up from elven worlds showed that something bad was definitely happening there. Ancient elven songs that had been broadcast across space for thousands of years had suddenly stopped. The magical energy readings from elven planets were getting weaker every day, which meant the forests and crystal gardens that gave elves their power were being destroyed. Kate said their scouts had also seen alien warships attacking planets that used to be free and independent. Species that had never bothered anyone were being conquered and their people taken away in prison ships. The Confederacy was not content to just rule the inner galaxy anymore. They wanted to control everything and everyone. Lisa made her decision. She told Amy to send a message back to Lyra Moonwhisper saying that humanity would meet with her at a neutral location. They would hear what she had to say and decide if the elves could be trusted. But Lisa also made it clear that humanity was not the same weak species that had been exiled 50 years ago. They had grown strong in the darkness between the stars, and they would not be pushed around by anyone ever again. The bridge crew started working to prepare the fleet for what might come next. Lisa watched the stars and wondered if humans could ever truly forgive those who had wronged them. She wondered if working with former enemies was possible, or if it would just lead to more betrayal and pain. But she also knew that sometimes the right thing to do was not the easy thing to do. The galaxy had changed since humanity left, and maybe it was time for everything to change again. This time, humans would have a say in how that change happened. The meeting place was an old space station called Nexus Point that floated in empty space between human and alien territory. Nobody owned it and nobody wanted it, which made it perfect for secret meetings. Lisa Monroe brought only her fastest ship and her most trusted people. She did not want to scare the elven princess, but she also did not want to walk into a trap. Dr. Amy Carter checked her equipment one more time before they docked at the station. She had brought devices that could detect lies and weapons plus medical supplies in case someone got hurt. Amy was nervous about meeting real elves for the first time. She had studied them from far away for years, but seeing one face-to-face would be completely different. Commander Kate Sullivan led a small team of human soldiers onto the station first. They checked every room and hallway to make sure it was safe. Kate found the air recycling systems working properly and no signs that anyone was hiding weapons or bombs. The station was old and rusty, but still functional enough for their needs. Lyra Moonwhisper was waiting for them in the station's main meeting room. She was taller than any human and had long silver hair that seemed to glow with its own light. Her skin was pale like moonlight, and her eyes were the color of deep forest leaves. She wore simple clothes instead of fancy royal robes, but she still looked like someone born to rule. Lisa studied the elven princess carefully as they sat down across from each other at a metal table. Lyra looked tired and sad, like someone who had seen too much pain. Her hands shook slightly when she reached for the cup of water Amy offered her. This was not what Lisa had expected from one of the proud elves who had helped exile humanity. Lyra spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through trees. She thanked the humans for coming and said she knew they had every reason to hate all elves. She admitted that her people had made a terrible mistake when they agreed to work with the aliens to force humans out of the galaxy. The elves had been afraid that human technology would make elven magic seem old and useless. Amy listened carefully as Lyra explained what had happened to the elven worlds. The alien confederacy had started by asking for small favors. They wanted to build research stations near elven planets to study magic. They asked to take some elven children to their schools to learn about different cultures. They requested permission to harvest magical crystals from elven forests for scientific experiments. Each request seemed harmless by itself, but together they had trapped the elves in agreements they could not escape. The research stations became military bases. The elven children who went to alien schools never came home. The crystal harvesting destroyed entire forests and left the land dead and empty. Kate asked hard questions about elven military strength and whether they could actually help fight the Confederacy. Lyra answered honestly that most elven warriors had been killed or captured already. The survivors were hiding in underground cities or living as refugees on other worlds. But she promised that elves who remained free would fight with everything they had if humans helped them. Amy was fascinated when Lyra demonstrated her magical abilities. The elven princess made flowers grow from metal scraps and created balls of light that floated through the air. She explained that elven magic came from connecting with living things and the energy that flowed between all creatures. Amy realized that human technology might be able to amplify this power in ways no one had ever imagined. The conversation was interrupted when Kate's soldiers brought in a prisoner they had caught trying to sneak onto the station. The prisoner was unlike anything the humans had seen before. She looked almost human, but her skin was made of what appeared to be living crystal that changed colors as she breathed. Her eyes were bright blue and had no pupils. The crystal woman said her name was Vera Nis, and that she came from a species called the Kithara. She claimed to be part of a group of aliens who were also fighting against the Confederacy. Vera Nis said many alien species were suffering under the current government, just like the elves and humans were. Lisa was suspicious of this convenient coincidence. It seemed too easy that a rebel alien would show up right when humans and elves were meeting. But Amy's lie detection equipment showed that Varanus was telling the truth about wanting to fight the Confederacy. Varanus explained that the alien government was controlled by only a few species who had seized power long ago. Most aliens were forced to obey or be destroyed. Her own people had been enslaved, and their crystal cities turned into factories that made weapons for the Confederacy military. She had escaped and spent years looking for others who wanted to fight back. Amy asked if human technology could help alien rebels the same way it might help elven magic. Varanus said her people's crystal biology could store and focus energy in amazing ways, but they needed better weapons and ships to have any chance against the Confederacy's military. Kate worried that working with too many different groups would make their plans too complicated, but Lisa saw an opportunity that was bigger than just getting revenge on the people who had exiled humanity. They could build an alliance that would change the entire galaxy. Lyra Lay offered to share ancient, elven star charts that showed secret routes between worlds that the Confederacy did not know about. These hidden paths through space would let rebel forces move around without being detected by alien patrols. She also promised to teach humans how to combine technology with magic in ways that had never been tried before. Varanus said she could contact other rebel alien groups and convince them to join the alliance. She knew where the Confederacy kept their prisoners and which military bases were most vulnerable to attack. Her crystal people could also provide materials that human engineers had never worked with before. Amy was excited about the possibility of learning from both elven magic and alien science. She believed that combining knowledge from all three species could create new inventions that would give them advantages no one expected. Lisa made her decision after thinking carefully about the risks and benefits. She agreed to form an alliance between humans, elves, and rebel aliens. But she made it clear that humans would not be junior partners in this arrangement. They had spent 50 years preparing for their return, and they would not be pushed aside again. The three leaders shook hands to seal their agreement, though Varanus had to be careful not to cut anyone with her crystal fingers. They began planning their first operation together, choosing to attack the alien forces occupying the elven homeworld. It would be a test to see if their alliance could actually work when the fighting started. Lisa knew that many humans would be angry about working with elves and aliens after what had happened. But she also knew that sometimes former enemies could become the strongest allies if they found common ground in facing a greater threat. The elven homeworld of Ethermore hung in space like a blue and green jewel, but dark alien ships surrounded it like hungry vultures. Captain Lisa Monroe studied the enemy fleet through her ship's sensors and counted at least 200 Confederacy warships protecting the planet. It was going to be the biggest battle humanity had fought since their exile began. Dr. Amy Carter worked frantically in her laboratory, connecting human computer systems to elven magical crystals that Lorelei had brought from her homeworld. The Dao combination was creating energy readings that went far beyond anything Amy had ever seen. When she touched the crystal with her scanner, lights danced across its surface, and the computer screens showed power levels that should have been impossible. Commander. Kate Sullivan reviewed the battle plans with both human and alien officers. The rebel aliens had brought their own ships to join the fight, strange vessels that looked like they were grown rather than built. Varanus explained that her people shaped their technology from living crystal that could repair itself and adapt to different situations. Lyra Lay stood on the bridge of Lisa's flagship, watching her homeworld through the main window. Tears ran down her face as she saw the dark scars where alien factories had been built over the sacred forests. The beautiful crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years were now covered with ugly metal structures that pumped black smoke into the clear air. Lisa had chosen to approach Ethermore during a massive solar storm that filled the space around the planet with electrical interference. The storm would hide their ships from enemy sensors until they were close enough to attack. It was a risky plan because the same storm that hid them would also make it harder for their own weapons to work properly. The Alliance fleet moved through the storm like ghosts, with human ships in the center, elven vessels on the flanks, and crystal alien ships scattered throughout to provide support. Amy had managed to connect the three different types of technology so they could all communicate and coordinate their attacks. Kate led the first wave of fighters, small fast ships that could slip through the storm and hit enemy targets before the main battle began. Her pilots were the best humanity had trained during their 50 years of exile, and they had been waiting their whole lives for a chance to prove themselves in real combat. The attack began when Kate's fighters emerged from the storm and struck the outer ring of enemy ships. Human weapons fired precise beams of energy, while elven magic users created illusions that made the fighters appear to be in multiple places at once. The enemy crews were confused and started shooting at targets that were not really there. Varanus and her crystal people used their ships to amplify the elven illusions, making them so realistic that entire enemy squadrons wasted their ammunition on fake targets. The crystal ships could also absorb energy from enemy weapons and redirect it back at the attackers, turning the Confederacy's own power against them. Lisa brought the main fleet out of the storm just as the enemy commanders realized they were under attack. The sight of hundreds of human warships appearing suddenly from the electrical chaos sent panic through the Confederacy forces. They had not expected humans to return so soon or with such a large fleet. The battle became a massive three-dimensional dance of ships and weapons fire. Human vessels used their superior speed and firepower to break through enemy lines, while elven ships provided magical support that confused and misdirected enemy attacks. The rebel alien ships served as mobile bases that could quickly move to wherever they were needed most. Amy watched from the science station as her combined technology systems performed beyond all expectations. Human computers, guided by elven magic, could predict enemy movements before they happened. Crystal alien materials enhanced human weapons to make them far more powerful than they had ever been before. On the surface of Ether Moor, Lyrelai led a group of rescued elven warriors in an attack on the planetary capital. They moved through the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city, fighting alien soldiers who had occupied their homeland for too long. The elves fought with both magic and weapons, calling on the power of their wounded but not dead world. Kate's ground forces landed near the main government building where Confederacy officers were holding elven prisoners, including Lyrelai's younger brother. The building was heavily defended, but human soldiers worked with elven magic users to create combinations of tactics that the enemy could not counter. Amy used her technology to break through the electronic locks and magical barriers that protected the prison cells. She found hundreds of elven children who had been taken from their families and forced to use their magic to power alien machines. Many of them were weak and sick from years of captivity. The liberation of the prison became a turning point in the battle. As word spread that the elven hostages were being freed, more local resistance fighters joined the attack. Elves, who had been hiding in the ruins of their cities, came out to fight alongside their human allies. Lisa coordinated the space battle while also directing support for the ground forces. She used human orbital weapons to destroy alien factories and military bases while being careful not to damage the natural areas that elves needed to survive. It was a delicate balance between winning the battle and preserving what made Ether Moor worth saving. The enemy fleet commander, an insect-like alien called Zarathul, tried to escape when she realized the battle was lost, but Varanus had positioned her crystal ships to block all the escape routes. The Supreme Admiral found herself trapped between human weapons and alien rebels who had once been her subjects. Zarathul sent a message threatening to destroy Ether Moor completely, rather than let it fall into rebel hands. She claimed to have weapons hidden on the planet that could burn away all life in a matter of hours. Lisa had to decide whether to let the enemy commander escape or risk the complete destruction of the world they were trying to save. Lyrelai made the choice for her. The elven princess used her strongest magic to reach into Zarathul's ship and disable the weapons before they could be fired. The effort left Lyrelai unconscious, but it saved her homeworld and allowed the Alliance forces to capture the enemy. Commander alive! The victory at Ether Moor sent shockwaves across the galaxy as news of the battle spread. Humanity had returned not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as liberators who fought alongside former enemies to free the oppressed. The alliance between humans, elves, and rebel aliens had proven itself in combat and shown that cooperation could defeat tyranny. But Lisa knew this was only the beginning. The Confederacy still controlled most of the galaxy, and they would not give up their power without a much bigger fight. The real war was just starting, and humanity would need all, their new allies if they hoped to win it. Supreme Admiral Zarathul escaped from her prison ship 3 days after the battle at Ether Moor. Her insect warriors had sacrificed themselves to free her, and now she was angrier than ever. The defeat at the Elven homeworld had embarrassed her in front of the other Confederacy leaders, and she planned to make humanity pay for that humiliation. Captain Lisa Monroe received the bad news while she was meeting with rescued Elven leaders on Ether Moor. The planet was slowly healing from years of alien occupation, but the recovery would take decades. Ancient forests needed to be replanted, and crystal gardens had to be rebuilt from scratch. The elves were grateful for their freedom, but they were also weak from their suffering. Dr. Amy Carter was studying captured alien technology when emergency alarms started ringing throughout the ship. The early warning systems that humanity had placed around their hidden colonies were reporting massive enemy fleets heading toward human space. Zarathul was not just planning revenge, she was preparing to destroy every human world she could find. Commander Kate Sullivan rushed to the bridge with intelligence reports from their spy networks. The Confederacy was mobilizing everything they had for what they called the final solution to the human problem. Admiral Zarathul had convinced the other alien leaders that humans would never stop fighting until they were completely eliminated. Lisa felt sick as she read the reports about what was happening to human colonies in the Outer Rim. The alien fleets were not just attacking military targets, they were burning entire planets and killing everyone they found. Families who had never hurt anyone were dying because they shared the same species as the rebels who had freed Ether Moor. The worst news came from New Terra, the largest human refugee settlement that had been built during the long exile. 3 million humans lived there in cities carved into asteroids and floating platforms. It was not a military base or a weapons factory, just a place where human families had tried to build normal lives far from the conflicts of the inner galaxy. Amy received a desperate message from her sister Helen, who lived on New Terra with her 2 young children. The Confederacy fleet was only hours away, and the colony's defenses would not be able to stop them. Helen begged Amy to convince Lisa to send help, but they all knew the human fleet was too far away to arrive in time. Kate wanted to abandon the alliance and focus only on protecting human worlds. She argued that working with elves and rebel aliens was a luxury they could not afford while their own people were being slaughtered. Many human officers agreed with her, saying that charity toward former enemies was costing human lives. Liralai offered to bring every elven ship to help defend New Terra, but her people were still too weak from their own suffering. The elven fleet had only a few dozen working vessels, and most of those were small ships designed for exploration rather than war. They would be destroyed quickly if they faced the full power of Zarathul's attack force. Veranis brought different news that made the situation even more complicated. Her crystal people had discovered the location of something called the Soul Harvester, a secret Confederacy weapon that could drain the life energy from entire planets. The device was hidden in an artificial nebula that blocked all sensors, and it had already been used to kill everything on 3 different worlds. Lisa faced the hardest decision of her life. She could take the entire Alliance fleet to defend New Terra and probably save the human colony, but that would leave the Soul Harvester free to destroy other worlds. Or she could attack the secret weapon and try to eliminate the ultimate threat, but millions of humans might die while she was gone. Amy worked frantically to find a third option, but the numbers would not change no matter how many times she calculated them. The Alliance simply did not have enough ships to fight on 2 fronts at the same time. They would have to choose between saving humans and saving everyone else. The debate was interrupted when they received an encrypted message from inside the Confederacy government. The message came from rebel aliens who had infiltrated the enemy command structure. They warned that the Soul Harvester was about to be used against the Elven homeworld and several other recently liberated planets. Kate exploded with anger when she heard this news. She accused Lisa of caring more about aliens than about her own species. Kate said the alliance had been a mistake from the beginning, and that humans should have stuck to taking care of themselves instead of trying to save people who had never helped them. Liralai tried to calm the situation by offering to take her brother and the other rescued elves to help defend New Terra. She said elven magic might be able to protect the human colony, even if their ships were not strong enough to fight the enemy fleet. It was a desperate plan, but it might give the humans time to evacuate their families. Amy discovered something important while analyzing the Soul Harvester intelligence. The weapon required massive amounts of magical energy to function, which it obtained by draining psychic species like elves. If the device was used against Ethermore, it would not only kill all the elves there, but also become powerful enough to destroy dozens of other worlds. Lisa realized that protecting New Terra and stopping the Soul Harvester were not really separate problems. If Zarathul succeeded in using the ultimate weapon, she would eventually hunt down and kill every human in the galaxy anyway. The only real choice was between dying now or dying later. The Alliance forces split up for the first time since they had been formed. Kate led half the human fleet to defend New Terra, while Lisa took the rest to attack the Soul Harvester. Lyrelay went with Kate to use elven magic in defense of the human colony, while Varanus joined Lisa's attack force with her crystal ships. Amy felt torn between staying with her sister's family and helping to stop the ultimate weapon. In the end, she chose to go with Lisa, knowing that her scientific skills might be needed to understand and destroy alien technology. She sent a message to Helen promising to save her if it was humanly possible. The journey to the artificial nebula took 2 days, and during that time Lisa received constant updates about the battle at New Terra. Kate's forces were fighting bravely, but they were heavily outnumbered. Lyrelay's magic was helping to protect the human cities, but even elven power had limits. Lisa's attack force reached the nebula just as they received word that New Terra's outer defenses had been breached. Enemy ships were beginning to land troops on the asteroid cities where millions of human families were hiding. The timing could not have been worse, but there was no turning back now. Inside the nebula, they found the Soul Harvester, a massive station that looked like a mechanical spider surrounded by glowing energy webs. The device was already active, drawing power from captured psychic beings who were held in crystal cages around its core. Lisa could see that some of the prisoners were elves who had been taken during earlier raids. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin in earnest, with humanity caught between saving their own people and saving everyone else. Lisa prayed that they would be strong enough to do both, but she feared that some prices were too high for anyone to pay. The Soul Harvester station was even more terrifying up close than it had appeared in the intelligence reports. Captain Lisa Monroe watched through her ship's main window as massive energy beams reached out from the station like hungry tentacles, drawing power from the captured psychic beings held in crystal prisons around its core. Each beam pulsed with stolen life force that made the entire structure glow with sickly light. Dr. Amy Carter worked at her station to analyze the weapons' energy patterns while the Alliance fleet prepared for their attack. She discovered that the device was not just collecting power randomly. It was specifically designed to drain elves, humans, and other species that had strong mental abilities. The Confederacy had been planning this ultimate weapon for decades. Supreme Admiral Zarathul appeared on their communication screens from inside the Soul Harvester. Her insect face showed no emotion as she spoke, but her voice carried the satisfaction of someone who believed she had already won. She told Lisa that human colonies were burning throughout the galaxy, and that the Alliance fleet would be destroyed just like all the others who had opposed her. Lisa tried not to think about what was happening at New Terra, where Commander Kate Sullivan was fighting to protect 3 million human civilians. The last message from Kate had reported that enemy forces were landing in the main city centers, and that elven magic was the only thing keeping the defensive shields working. Every minute Lisa spent here was another minute that her own people were dying. Varanus brought her crystal ships into formation alongside the human vessels as they approached the station. Her people had suffered under Confederacy rule for generations, and she was determined to end their oppression once and for all. The crystal ships began to glow as they absorbed energy from the nebula around them, preparing to use that power against their former masters. The battle began when Zarathul activated the Soul Harvester's defensive systems. Waves of energy blasted out from the station, designed to overload the nervous systems of any psychic species that came too close. Several elven pilots collapsed at their controls as the psychic attack hit them, but Amy's protective devices kept the worst effects from reaching the human crews. Lisa led her ships in a direct assault on the station's outer defenses, while Varanus used her crystal vessels to create interference patterns that confused the enemy targeting systems. The combined human and alien fleet moved like a school of fish, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be without needing constant communication. Amy detected something strange in the station's energy readings. The Soul Harvester was not just storing the power it collected from prisoners. It was feeding that energy directly to someone inside the central core. She realized that the Confederacy leaders were using the stolen life force to keep themselves alive far beyond their natural lifespans. The revelation changed everything about the battle. This was not just about stopping a weapon, it was about ending the immortal tyranny that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. The alien leaders had been draining the life from other species to maintain their own power, making themselves into parasites that fed on the suffering of everyone. Else, Lisa ordered all ships to focus their attacks on the station's core while Amy worked to find a way inside. They needed to reach the imprisoned psychic beings and free them before the Soul Harvester could complete its current cycle. If Zarathul succeeded in draining all the captured elves, she would have enough power to destroy entire star systems. The fighting became desperate as more enemy ships arrived to defend the station. Zarathul had called for reinforcements from across the galaxy, and they were arriving faster than the Alliance could destroy them. Lisa knew they only had minutes before they would be completely outnumbered. Amy found a weakness in the station's structure where human technology might be able to break through the alien defenses, but someone would need to get inside the core and manually overload the energy systems from within. It would be a suicide mission because the person doing it would be exposed to all the psychic energy the station had collected. Lisa volunteered to go inside herself, but Amy insisted on taking the mission instead. As the Alliance's scientist, Amy was the only person who understood the station's technology well enough to sabotage it properly. She also knew that Lisa was needed to command the fleet and coordinate with Kate's forces at New Terra. Varanus offered to help Amy reach the station's core. Her crystal biology would provide some protection against the psychic energy, and her people's shape-shifting abilities would let her bypass security systems that were designed to stop normal organic life forms. Together, they might be able to destroy the Soul Harvester from within. The infiltration team used a small stealth ship to approach the station, while the main fleet continued their attack. Amy carried devices that could disrupt the energy flow, while Varanus brought crystalline explosives that would shatter the core's containment systems. They both knew they probably would not survive, but they also knew that failure meant the death of billions. Inside the station, they found horrors beyond imagination. Thousands of prisoners from dozens of species were held in energy cages, their life force being slowly drained to power the immortal alien rulers. Many of the captives were already dead, their bodies dried up like ancient mummies while their spirits continued to fuel the machine. Amy began working to free the prisoners while Varanus planted her explosives around the core chamber. The energy levels inside the station were so high that both of them started to feel their strength being pulled away by the same systems that kept the Confederacy leaders alive. They had to work fast before they became too weak to complete their mission. Zarathul appeared in the core chamber just as Amy finished connecting her disruption devices. The Supreme Admiral had abandoned her command post to stop the infiltrators personally. She revealed that she was over 3,000 years old and had used the Soul Harvester to drain hundreds of worlds. She would not allow two primitives to end her eternal reign. The final confrontation was brief but decisive. Varanus used her crystal body to absorb Zarathul's energy attacks, while Amy activated the disruption sequence. The station began to tear itself apart as the stolen life force was released back to the universe. The immortal tyrant aged rapidly, as her artificial life support failed, crumbling to dust as her true age finally caught up with her. Amy and Varanus barely escaped the collapsing station, rescued by Lisa's ships just before the core exploded. The destruction of the Soul Harvester sent shock waves through the Confederacy fleet, and many alien captains surrendered when they realized their immortal leaders were finally dead. News of the victory reached New Terra just as Kate's defenses were about to be overwhelmed. The Confederacy forces attacking the human colony suddenly stopped fighting when they learned that their command structure had collapsed. Many alien soldiers who had been forced to serve switched sides and joined the rebellion against their former masters. The galaxy began to change rapidly as word spread that the tyrants were dead and their ultimate weapon destroyed. Species that had been enslaved for generations rose up against their oppressors. Planets that had been strip-mined for resources started the long process of healing. Children who had been taken from their families began the journey home. Lisa stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the stars, knowing that humanity had finally found its place among them. Not as conquerors or exiles, but as the bridge builders who had helped unite the galaxy against tyranny. The future would bring new challenges, but it would face them with all the species of the galaxy working together. Dr. Amy Carter established the first interspecies academy on a neutral world where humans, elves, aliens, and others could learn from each other. The academy's symbol was a tree with roots of crystal, branches of metal, and leaves of pure energy, representing the union of all the different forms of life that made the galaxy beautiful. The last scene of the Great War showed children of many species playing together in the Academy gardens, their laughter echoing across a galaxy that had finally learned to choose cooperation over domination.